The sky that chose him, the morning sun rose slowly over Air Base Chopper, touching the runway with a golden glow. The air carried the familiar scent of fuel, metal, and heat, the smell of discipline, bravery, and sacrifice. Technicians moved like shadows around the parked jets, checking panels, tightening bolts, running tests. Engines hummed in the distance. Birds scattered every time a fighter roared. And through this controlled chaos walked Squadron Leader Aries Khan, his step steady, his expression calm, his eyes sharp. Aries wasn't just any pilot. He was the Air Force's rising star, the kind of man the sky itself seemed to choose. At only 28, he had already completed more successful missions than many pilots twice his age. But behind the uniform, behind the confidence, behind the disciplined silence, he carried a grief that never left him. On his wrist was a thin silver bracelet, a small name engraved, Amina, his younger sister. His best friend, his compass. She had died in a car accident the previous year. Since then, every time Aries flew, he whispered her name, as if asking the sky to let him borrow her courage. Today was supposed to be easy, a routine patrol, clear skies, no threats. But something inside Aries felt different, a heaviness he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the dreams he had been having. Dreams where Amina called his name from the clouds. Warning him, he shook the thoughts away. Duty, first, always. The JF-17 Thunder stood waiting for him. A beautiful beast. Sleek lines, sharp angles, and an engine that sounded like lightning trapped in metal. Its gray-blue body shimmered under the sun, and Aries couldn't help but smile. This jet wasn't just a machine. It was a partner, the only thing that understood the parts of him he never spoke about. He placed his hand gently on the aircraft's nose. Ready for another dance, he whispered. The technicians chuckled softly. Everyone knew Aries treated the JF-17 like a living being, and in a way, it had saved his life once. It had carried him home through a storm that destroyed 2 other aircraft. It had spun through dogfights with an agility that left enemies stunned. Riz believed the plane trusted him. Maybe that's why the sky felt sacred to him. It was the only place where life, death, and faith lived side by side. He climbed into the cockpit. The familiar seat hugged his body. The controls blinked to life. The world outside shrank to a narrow view, framed by glass and metal. He pulled his helmet on, adjusted the microphone, took a deep breath, and softly whispered to me, "Stay with me today." Then he pressed the throttle. The engine roared, the ground trembled, and the JF-17 surged forward like a beast breaking free of its chains. Within seconds, the wheels lifted. The earth fell away. Aries soared. The sky opened up like a vast blue ocean, and he felt the tension leaving his chest. He could breathe, really breathe. The world below was full of noise, chaos, and memories he didn't want to carry. But up here, the wind washed everything clean. This was home. This was freedom. This was the place Amina had loved to see him. Fly 20 minutes into the patrol. The first sign appeared. A tiny flash on the radar. A blip. Unidentified. Riz frowned. He adjusted the radar range. The blip grew stronger. Not a bird, not a drone. Something faster. And heading to Pakistani airspace. His heartbeat steadied. His senses sharpened. Control. This is Falcon 21. I have an unknown contact at bearing 067. Altitude, 31,000 feet. Intercepting. The radio crackled. Copy. Falcon 21. Proceed with caution. Aries angled the JF-17 gently, letting the jet slice through clouds with surgical precision. That's when he saw it, a distant shape, barely visible through the haze. It wasn't flying normally, it wasn't maintaining altitude, it wasn't stable, and strangely, it wasn't responding to any frequency. Aries narrowed his eyes. This wasn't typical enemy behavior. Something was off. He pressed the throttle forward. The hunt had begun, but it didn't feel like a hunt. It felt like something else, something heavier. As he closed the distance, more details came into view. The aircraft wasn't a fighter. It wasn't a military jet at all. It was a medical transport aircraft. White body, green stripes. Emergency insignia, and smoke was trailing from its left wing. Thick, dark, dangerous. Aries's chest tightened. Inside the cockpit, through the angled glass, he saw someone, a pilot, not sitting, not focused, not commanding. The man was slumped to one side, holding his shoulder, blood staining his uniform. He wasn't an intruder. He wasn't a threat. He was dying in the sky. And he needed help. Aries swallowed hard. Duty changed. Mission changed. This wasn't a target to intercept. This was a life to save. Aries flew closer, heart pounding, eyes locked on the damaged aircraft. For the first time that day, he whispered to me, "Guide me," because he knew this was not going to be routine. This was going to test every skill he had, every heartbeat, every instinct, every memory, and maybe save a life that fate had almost taken. The sky that wouldn't let go. Aries held his breath as the damaged medical aircraft drifted unevenly through the sky. Thick smoke trailed behind it, dissolving into the cold blue air. The more he studied its motion, the more he realized it was seconds away from losing total control. He pulled his JF-17 closer, flying parallel to it, wingtip to wing. The turbulence from the wounded aircraft buffeted his jet, but he maintained his position with perfect precision. Aries switched to the international emergency frequency. Medical transport, 400. This is Pakistan Air Force, JF-17, Thunder Escort. Do you read me? Only static. He tried again, louder. Pilot of 481. Respond immediately. Nothing. The jet shuddered again as the medical plane rocked violently, dipping nose first before lifting sharply. The movements weren't deliberate. They were the erratic spasms of a machine in agony. Aries clenched his jaw. He had to see the pilot again. See how bad things were. He nudged his jet even to the left, aligning cockpit to cockpit. The sight made his stomach drop. The pilot inside was a young man, maybe in his early 30s, his uniform stained crimson, one hand pressed against his shoulder, the other barely touching the controls. His head bobbed weakly, his eyes half closed. He was slipping in and out of consciousness. Aries tapped the glass of his own canopy, trying to get his attention. The man inside blinked, raised his head a little, and finally saw him. Their eyes met. Desperation in one, determination in the other. With the little strength he had, the injured pilot lifted a trembling hand, not to control the aircraft, not to speak, but as if saying, "Please, help me." Aries felt his chest stretch painfully. He wasn't facing an enemy, a threat, or an intruder. He was facing a father, a son, a brother, another life hanging by a thread. And that thread was breaking fast. "Control, this is Falcon 21, Aries said. His voice was calm, but his heart was hammering. "I have visual on the medical aircraft. Pilot is severely injured. He's on the verge of unconsciousness. The left engine is damaged, leaking smoke. Request immediate clearance for emergency intervention." The radio crackled. "Falcon 21, divert your patrol. Maintain distance. Rescue helicopters are being dispatched." Aries stared at the dying aircraft. Rescue helicopters. There was no time. At this altitude, with this level of damage, the aircraft would spiral down long before any helicopter arrived. He gritted his teeth. Negative control. The aircraft will not stay airborne for more than 3 minutes. Repeat, 3 minutes. I'm going in. Static. Then, Falcon 21, stand down. This is not your responsibility. Aries pressed his radio button so hard it clicked sharply. It is my responsibility. I'm the only one up here. There was a long silence, then a single sentence that meant more than any order. Proceed. At your own risk. Aries closed his eyes, briefly. Risk. He had accepted that the day he wore the uniform, he slid his JF-17 even closer. Dangerously close until the two aircraft flew almost in formation. The wind thrashed between them like a living creature, pushing, pulling, threatening to tear them apart. One wrong move, and both jets would collide in seconds. Aries steadied his breathing. He signaled using hand gestures, simple, old-school aviation communication. "Follow me. Stabilize your altitude. I will guide you down." The injured pilot tried to respond, his hand rising weakly, then falling. His head slumped forward again. The aircraft dipped suddenly. Aries reacted instantly, pushing his throttle forward and bringing the JF-17 underneath the medical jet, using controlled turbulence from his own wake to nudge the falling aircraft upward. It was the kind of maneuver that textbooks warned pilots never to attempt, but textbooks didn't see a dying man's eyes 20 seconds ago. The medical aircraft regained a shaky balance. Aries' forehead was slick with sweat. His hands were tight on the controls. His jet protested with every movement. He ignored all of it. He tried talking again. "Pilot of 481, stay with me. You need to hold the yoke. You need to keep your aircraft level. Look at me." He saw the injured man's eyelids flutter. Good. He was still conscious. Barely. The plane jerked violently again, this time harder. Alarms inside the JF-17 began to beep. Aries' instincts screamed at him to pull away, to save himself, but he refused. He angled his jet just inches below the failing wing of the medical aircraft, using his own air pressure to compensate for the damaged engine. It felt like carrying a dying bird on his palm. Every shudder of the medical plane shook him too. Every loss of altitude was a countdown to death. He spoke again, louder. "Stay awake. Look at me. Hold the controls." The pilot inside raised his head once more. Pain etched across his face. He tried to grip the yoke with his good hand. The aircraft steadied for 2 seconds. Then the injured pilot's eyes rolled back. His hand slipped away. The plane nosed downward, and for the first time, Aries felt real fear. Not for himself, for the man whose life was falling through the sky. He made a decision pilots weren't trained to make. He matched the dive of the medical aircraft, flying almost under its belly, using his own jet's lift to keep it afloat. The JF-17 groaned, metal shaking, alarms shrieking. "Come on," Aries whispered. "Come on. Don't go down. Not today." Wind slammed against the cockpit. The medical jet spun slightly. Aries' counter rolled. Smoke blinded half his vision. He held steady. Every muscle in his arms screamed from the strain. But slowly, the descent slowed. Aries gasped for breath. He had never pushed the jet or himself like this before. "Control," he shouted into the radio. "Get the emergency runway ready now. I'm bringing him in, whether you like it or not." "Understood." Falcon 21. Emergency crews are rolling. Ares steadied his jet and whispered to me, "Stay with me. I can't do this alone." And with 2 aircraft hanging on a thread, he began the most dangerous escort of his life. The sky trembled around them as both aircraft descended in a dangerous, uneven rhythm. Ares's JF-17 shook violently with each adjustment he made to keep the wounded medical plane from dropping. To anyone watching from the ground, it looked impossible, like 2 birds locked in a life-or-death dance. Each movement, a heartbeat away from disaster. Riz, S voice cut through the roaring wind inside his helmet. "Control, give me the nearest runway coordinates again." "Falcon 21 emergency runway is ready. You are 8 minutes away." 8 minutes, a lifetime in the air. A blink before disaster. Riz swallowed hard. The medical aircraft was losing altitude faster than expected. The damaged engine coughed smoke in explosive bursts, each one sending the jet wobbling closer to a fatal spiral. Inside that cockpit was a man fighting for consciousness and failing. Riz reached out with his voice again, desperate. 481 pilot, stay with me. Don't close your eyes. But the pilot's head had slumped. Again. His hand dangled loosely beside the controls. Ares felt something sharp twist inside his chest. The feeling he got the night passed away, that feeling of helplessness. Not again. Not today. He'd rather crash than watch another life slip away in front of him. Ares pulled his jet even closer, so closed the metal of the 2 aircraft, almost kissed. The turbulence between them was monstrous. Air currents slapped the JF-17, shaking it like a toy. Warning alarms screamed inside his cockpit, blinking red across his control panel. But Ares tuned it all out. He angled his aircraft slightly lower, letting the upward force from the JF-17's wings support the sagging, dying medical plane. Come on, he whispered, sweat rolling down his spine. "Stay up, just a little longer." He could almost feel the strain in the air, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. The medical aircraft jolted. Again, Ares counter-rolled instantly. The force slammed him sideways. Pain shot through his shoulder. He gritted his teeth and pushed through. Every second was a war. The radio crackled. "Falcon, this is Air Marshal Rahim. What you're doing is beyond procedure. You are risking your life and the aircraft." Ares didn't blink. "With all due respect, sir, risk is already in progress. I'm not leaving him. You could collide, son. If it saves him, it's worth it." The radio fell silent. Then Rahim's voice softened, one pilot speaking to another. "May Allah guide your hands. Falcon 21, we're clearing all runways for you. Bring him home." Ares felt a small surge of strength, but the sky had other plans. Without warning, the medical aircraft's right engine coughed, then exploded in a burst of flame. Boom. The blast shook both aircraft like ragdolls. Ares' head smacked against his seat. Fire erupted across the medical jet's wing, trailing smoke and broken metal. The aircraft rolled sharply to the right, a deadly spiral starting, the kind that no pilot could recover from, except maybe one who refused to give up. Ares reacted faster than instinct, maybe faster than thought itself. He dove, he rolled, he placed his JF-17 under the collapsing wing, using the jet's own body to support the spiraling aircraft above. His cockpit vibrated so violently he could hardly see. The G-force slammed him deep into his seat. Stars danced at the edge of his vision. His breathing turned shallow. "Stay with me," he gasped. The medical aircraft was shaking apart. Panels ripped off. Fire licked across the fuselage. The sky had become a screaming battlefield and Ares was fighting it. Alone, he tried again, shouting through the open frequency. "Pilot 481, wake up. If you don't hold the controls, you will die. Fight it, fight." Something moved inside the cockpit. The injured pilot stirred. His hand slowly rose, trembling, shaking, then grabbed the yoke weakly. Ares almost cried. Good, hold it steady." The medical aircraft wobbled, but the roll slowed. The spiral broke, the nose lifted slightly. They were still falling, but now it was controlled, like a wounded eagle trying to glide instead of crash. Ares exhaled shakily, felt his arms trembling from the effort. But the worst wasn't over. Wind tore across the aircraft. The fire spread. Altitude dropped. Altitude warning. The JF-17 computer announced in a cold voice. 9,000 feet. 8,500. 8,000. Riz single quotes. His pulse quickened. At this height, any mistake was fatal. "Control," he shouted. "I need that runway clear now. We're coming in fast. Too fast. Runway is ready. Emergency crews in place." Ares tightened his grip. The medical plane's front landing gear released, but the back gear, DIDN, single quotes, a nightmare. If the aircraft landed like this, it would flip and explode. Ares's mind raced. He had seconds, maybe less, and then he knew exactly what he had to do. A crazy idea, a suicidal idea, a pilot's instinct combined with a brother's heart. He whispered, "Amina, help me get him down." He angled his JF-17 beneath the medical plane, closer than ever, almost touching it. Using his jet's aerodynamic push, he began supporting the back of the medical aircraft, trying to create lift that the missing landing gear could not. His controls screamed. The jet juttered violently. Engines strained, but he held. The runway came into view, long, silver, waiting, 5,000 feet. 4,000.3,000. The injured pilot was barely conscious again, but Aris shouted, "Follow me. Keep your nose level. Hold steady." The medical aircraft descended, slowly, trembling, sparks flying as its jammed gear scraped along the runway. Emergency crews sprinted alongside. Ares lowered his own jet, matching the descent perfectly, using his wings to hold the medical plane upright. Screech, sparks, metal, smoke, everything blurred, until finally, they touched down. Both aircraft skidded, sliding violently across the runway in a storm of sparks and smoke. The world spun. And then, silence. Ares blinked. He was alive, and so was the man he had saved. Final chapter, 8,900 words. The blast from the missile wasn't the end, at least. Zion hoped it wasn't. His parachute swayed violently as he descended toward the barren ridge below. Pain shot through his ribs, his leg throbbed, and his ears still rang from the explosion that had torn his JF-17 apart. But he was alive, barely. The wind whipped around him as he crashed into the sand, rolling painfully to a stop. For a moment, he simply lay there, staring at the sky that had once been his playground. The sky where he had danced, fought, survived. The sky where his father had once flown, and never returned. Zion clenched his jaw. "I'm not ending the same way," he whispered. He forced himself upright, limping toward the rocky cover of the ridge. His radio crackled, weak, but alive. "Control, this is Falcone, I'm down." Ejection successful. His breath hitched, enemy aircraft still airborne. Static swallowed his voice. Above him, the sky roared. The same hostile fighter that had shot him down circled back like a predator sniffing out its prey. Zion felt anger rise in his chest, not fear but something deeper, sharper. He had lost his jet, his shield, his wings, but he had not lost his courage. He pressed himself into the shadows, hiding beneath a boulder. Sand trembled as the jet thundered low. "It's looking for me," he muttered. "It wants to finish this." His hand brushed against something strapped to his vest. The emergency flare gun, useless against a fighter jet, but an idea sparked in his mind. He aimed the flare upward and fired. A bright red streak slashed across the sky. The enemy jet jerked away instinctively, assuming it was a missile. That gave Zion only moments, but moments were all he needed. He spread, limping, gasping toward the hilltop where a clear radio signal might exist. Every breath felt like a dagger in his lungs. His injured leg nearly gave out, but the memory of his father's last words kept him moving. "Never stop fighting for your sky." At the top, the wind hit him again, colder now. He lifted the radio, praying for a miracle. "This is Falcon 1. I need support." Repeat, "I need support." For a second, nothing. Then Falcon 1. "This is Falcon 2. We're tracking your beacon. Hold position. Back up inbound." Zion exhaled a broken laugh. Ali, his wingman, was alive, coming for him. But the enemy fighter returned, swooping low, hunting him like an animal. Zion didn't hide this time. He stood tall on the ridge, staring up. "You took my jet," he growled, "but you won't touch my sky." The fighter fired its cannons. Zion dove behind a rock as bullets tore into the earth around him. Then, like a miracle, the horizon rumbled. Two JF-17 thunders streaked through the clouds, their engines thundering like lions returning to the battlefield. Ali's voice filled Zion's radio. "Falcon 1, get down. We've got him." The two jets split in formation, one diving low, the other climbing high, executing a perfect pincer maneuver. The enemy jet tried to escape, but Ali stayed glued to his tail. The second JF-17 locked on from above. "Target acquired." The pilot confirmed. "Fire." A missile streaked across the sky and struck the hostile fighter dead center. The explosion bloomed like a blazing flower in the deep blue sky. Zion closed his eyes, a wave of relief washing through him. He wasn't alone. Pakistan's sky was never unguarded, not as long as men like his brothers still flew. Minutes later, rescue helicopters arrived. Medics strapped him onto a stretcher, but Zion grabbed Ali's wrist before they lifted him. "I lost my jet," he whispered. Ali smiled softly. "You didn't lose anything, brother. You survived, and that's what matters." "But I didn't finish the fight." Ali shook his head. "You did. We finished it for you. Because that's what a squadron is. One heart, one sky." Tears burned behind Zion's eyes, not of weakness, but pride. As the helicopter lifted off, Zion looked down at the desert, the crash site, the ridge where he had made his stand, the place where he thought he would die, but instead rediscovered his courage. The landscape shrank beneath him, replaced by the vast, endless sky, a sky he had almost lost. a sky he would return to. Weak Slaughterzion stood once again on the runway, healed, uniform crisp, eyes brighter than before. A brand new JF-17 Thunder gleamed before him, beautiful, powerful, waiting for him like a loyal friend, reborn. He placed a hand on its cool metal surface. "You brought me down," he whispered to his old aircraft's memory. "But this one will take me back up." Ali clapped him on the shoulder. "Ready, Falcon 1? Zion nodded. "Let's go home." The engine roared alive, the ground shook, the sky opened, and Zion soared upward once again, stronger, wiser, unbroken, because some men are born for the sky, because courage doesn't burn out, because the JF-17 Thunder isn't just a machine, it's the heartbeat of a nation. And today, that heartbeat thundered louder than ever.